Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is Mr. Gear. A student asked me for a solution to a couple of quiz questions, and I'm happy to provide. The first one was, which of these is a factor of the polynomial 4x cubed plus 8x squared minus 140x? There's a couple of different ways we could go about finding a factor. If we had one we could test, we could try synthetically dividing it. But this specifically says, go ahead and factor what's above, and then see which of those factors is one of these. Obviously, 3 of them are decoys, and one of them is an actual factor. Now, we know because it's a cubic function that it's going to have 3 factors. That was the fundamental theorem of algebra that told us that. We're going to have to factor this to get to those 3 factors. And a cubic function is difficult to factor, that is true. But the first thing we do when we go to factor something is look, is there anything I can factor out of all 3 terms? And there is. There's an x inside all 3 terms. So I'm going to start by factoring out an x and see what remains. In fact, I should also be looking at the coefficients to see if there's anything in there, and there is. They're all even, so at the very least I can get a 2 out. I think 140 is divisible by 4, just like 8 is, so I think I can factor a 4 out. Let's see what remains when I do. If I factor 4x out of 4x cubed, the only thing that remains is the 2 x's that didn't get factored out. It's x squared. If I factor 4x out of 8x squared, basically I'm dividing it out of 8x squared. I'm left with the 2 that 8 divided by 4 left, and I'm left with the x that dividing 1x out left. And it turns out that negative 140 actually makes negative 35 when you divide it by 4, and the x already left over here. So 4x divided out, factored out, and this is what remains. And lo and behold, it turns out that this is something that we know how to factor by our sort of standard factoring method. With no coefficient in the front, we know it's x and x. The second sign is negative, meaning that these 2 signs have to be opposites of each other. There's still the 4x out on the front. And if we can find 2 numbers that multiply to make 35, but subtract to make 2, we're golden. And it turns out there are 2 easy ones. Positive 7 and negative 5 will do that job. Factored. And when we compare the factored version of this polynomial with the ones that we think they might be, we find that x plus 7 is the only one that exists as an answer possibility and as a factor. We found our answer. Let's try another one. Similar concept. Here is a polynomial, x cubed plus 4x squared minus 4x minus 16, and we might be able to factor it. We could certainly try it by grouping, but we did a test. We did the rational root theorem, and it says, at least partially, here are 3 potential factors that might be factors of this thing. Let's see if one of them is, and it turns out with synthetic division, it's not terribly difficult. I'm going to take the coefficients of this polynomial, just the coefficients, because that's how synthetic division works. Go back and check out synthetic division if this is looking foreign to you. And I'm going to divide those coefficients by this factor, which means I change the sign, and then I do my division. 1 plus nothing gives me 1, and 1 times 8 makes 8. 4 and 8 makes 12, and 12 times 8 I think is 96. I've always got bad at that part of my times tables. 96 and negative 4 would make 92. We know it's a huge number anyway, and 92 times 8 is something enormous. It's never going to cancel out negative 16. There is a remainder, and therefore this one is not a factor of that polynomial. Let's try it again. 1, 4, negative 4, and negative 16 being divided this time by x minus 4, which makes 4 sit in my balcony. We change that sign so we can add here instead of subtracting like we usually do in dividing. 1 plus nothing makes 1, 1 times 4 makes 4, 4 and 4 makes 8, 8 times 4 makes 32, 32 and negative 4 makes 28, 28 and 4 is some enormous number, and no point in going on because we have a remainder. This is not a factor. One more time. 1, 4, negative 4, and negative 16 are my coefficients. This time we're dividing by x minus 2, so 2 goes in the balcony. 1 and nothing makes 1, 1 and 2 makes 2, 1 times 2 makes 2, 4 and 2 makes 6, 6 times 2 makes 12, 12 and negative 4 makes 8, 8 times 2 makes 16, and these add to cancel out. I have no remainder. This is a factor. The correct answer is that x minus 2 is a factor of the original polynomial. Hope that made sense. If not, come see me anytime.